Ask the clerk to call a roll, please.
Oops,
I should ask if she's ready.
that's okay. I have it here. Ron Kinsley,
Here.
Ron Buckholz,
Here.
Tom Duffy, John Wigheimer,
Here.
Stacy Hessel. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Next item is pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Number 4, certification and compliance, open meeting laws.
This meeting has been noticed to the public and news media as required by section 19.84 of the Wisconsin statutes.
Thank you. Number 5 of the meeting is agenda. The agenda is set. Number 6, public comment. Ms. Zilmer.
Good morning, Linda Zilmer, Edgewater property owner, resident of the village of Birchwood. My public comments today are primarily under items that you have under 16 County Administrator's Report. The public records request memo and then the fee schedules and resolution. I would ask that after discussion that this committee refer these drafts back to the individual committees because each department may have different experiences with public records request, and they might want to provide some input as to getting clarification on what is a public records request versus just a response over the counter, and also how much additional work something like this might create, because I see in the memo it says that if someone comes in with a verbal request, that it is still required to be entered into the system. So I think before the county moves forward with the policy this extensive, it would be helpful to get input from the departments. With regard to public records request, as an example, I have one that I feel is still outstanding. It was a simple request to just come to the counter at the zoning office to look at the history of zoning ordinance amendments. It's not been provided to me. I was told I'd have to be paid a couple $100s, where as I know in the past, amendments used to be kept filed and it was just an easy matter of going up to look at it. So that's why I wish there would be more, as an example of why I wish things would be discussed at department levels. And then the second item that I have is related to Class 2 notices, which may be what prompted this designation of a newspaper of record. I don't know that that solves the problem, but for over a year now, I have been attempting through all the channels I know, whether it's through the department or through the administrator or a combination of the administrator and the committee chair and previous county board chair, to have the county look at the staffing and processes to help alleviate problems like that, plus a lot of the other condensed time frame issues that arise for both the towns and the county in that department. And I hope too that per my email request that there is clarification on what a Class 2 notice is versus what it isn't. Thank you.
Thank you. Lynn, is there anybody online? Thank you. Number 7, approve the minutes of the previous meeting. Ms. Hessel?
I'll make that motion because I thought you were going to make the motion.
Mr. Hammer? We have a motion by Ms. Hessel, second by Mr. Righeimer to approve as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 8, Apostle Island National Park letter of support. Andy?
Yeah, we received, I think the chair and I received the items in the agenda from the regional representative for Congressman Tiffany, who was pursuing designating of the Apostle Islands as a national park. Right now, it's less than a national park. It's like a scenic or lakeshore or national park staff is there, but it's not an actual park. The belief is that if it's designated as a park, it would increase visitors and tourism to the area. They've asked for support from the region. The benefit to Sutter County would be more people in the area traveling through the area, or visiting Apostle Islands and then visiting Hayward. So did have this on for the Economic Development UW Extension Committee, They did make a motion to have me write a letter of support to provide to them. I plan to do that. If this committee wants to make a different recommendation or a different motion, you can do that. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and write a letter of support for them.
I move we approve it.
I second that.
Motion by Mr. Duffy, second by Ms. Hessel.
Question, do you always need approval for letters of support or can you just do those on your own?
Generally, like for broadband, I've been doing them on my own.
Mhm.
This just seemed like a little bit bigger issue and
Okay.
requested from the congressman, so we brought it on the agenda.
Okay, thank you.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And then maybe just add on if I ever thought I was requested for a letter of support I don't want to do or think it's questionable, I would bring it to the committee, but otherwise I would just normally do them.
Turn your light on, my friend.
I think there's a movement nationwide to add more parks.
Yeah, I just had a conversation with actually WDC rep in town yesterday, and he was telling me about the increase in traffic on the Ice Age Trail because that's now been designated a national, or it's in the process of being designated a national park rather than just whatever it was, whatever trail status it had before. They're switching it to a national park.
Thank you. Number 9, Veterans Report. Nicole?
Thank you for having me. Gary attached our budget performance report, just an office report breakdown. In June, we had 503 phone calls, 625 letters, emails, and faxes, and 207 office visits. June was a record month for us. We had 28 claims alone in the month of June that we submitted in behalf of veterans. The Veteran Service Office submitted 115 disability claims to date for the year, and we've received retroactive payment of $167,935.71 for claims decided in the veterans' favor. Our partnership with the La Crosse Vet Center is going well. We co-managed and hosted 4 individual and 3 group counseling sessions. For outreach, we did our monthly coffee and conversation with Gary and Nicole, which we've been doing on the first Wednesday of every month, and that's been going very well. Our training is up to date, and we also had our Northern Wisconsin CVSO training meeting in the month of June as well.
Thank you. Questions for her? Thank you.
for all you, Gary.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Number 10, Information Technology Report. Mr. Colson.
Okay, so breakdown of our activities. In June, we completed 123 requests. That includes coming in through various means, phone calls, emails, stopping in the hallway. We make tickets out of them. We received about 120 new tickets. This has kind of been our trend. We try to complete as many tickets as we can as soon as possible. So the incoming and outgoing are roughly the same. And so now we're finally beginning to do our wiring for the new jail cameras. So we may see a little slowdown in other activities because this is taking a lot of time for Alex and I. So July and part of August, we'll be doing a lot of that. That's really all I had to highlight.
Questions for you? Mike, I got a question. Like example on your report, the 36 calls for Health and Human Services, 20 for the Sheriff's Department. Without going into details, because I don't want to know details, is they call you for just about anything, or?
It could be for training issues, sending a new employee onboarding, terminations, desktop setups, remote access. I mean, you name it. Yeah. And for the Sheriff's Department, it's going to be, helping with their CAD systems, their records management systems, anything else you can probably think of, email. Yeah. Anything IT related.
Thank you. Thank you for all you do. Number 11, Human Resources. Rose?
Good morning. You have my report. We had a very, very busy month of June. Hiring, we're making headway on a lot of our open positions. The only thing I would add in the report is you had a closed session scheduled for today to hear a grievance from the Sawyer County Deputy Sheriff's Association. They have withdrawn their grievance, so you will not be hearing it today. The other grievance that's still out there is the one involving Ryan Schick. And briefs were due June 28th, and we are still waiting to hear the arbitrator's decision, what's going to happen there. Any questions?
When you lay down.
Yeah, so
Or just postpone.
no, not postponed. They have withdrawn it. So how their collective bargaining agreement works is so this was a discipline issue, so they weren't in agreement with it. They took it to Sheriff Morotech, and then they basically couldn't come to an understanding. And so then you guys would hear it and either, decline the grievance or not. But the employee has decided to withdraw the grievance. Yes,
Thank you, Rose.
thank you.
Number 12, County Clerk Department Report.
Okay, we had our June conference for WCCA in Hayward, and everybody seemed to love it. They had a great time. Several of them are planning to bring families back for vacationing and four-wheeling and cabin pontooning and all that good stuff. We have put the Next Request software into place. It's been live since the 3rd of July. So we are directing people to actually go out to the website and type in their request there. It's very quick and easy to do. If they don't, we just currently are uploading them ourselves, copying them in the system. And you'll see that it does create some unique and easy reports. So far in my use of it, I see a time savings because we're not trying to track emails back and forth. When we had to follow up with email process, it was so cumbersome to try to see if 2 or 3 people had touched the records request. Now it's all there in the one screen, and we can just communicate through that one thread, so it's all tied together. So that is a big help as far as I'm concerned. Lisa Horton has officially now been gone, and Liz Klein is in her place temporarily, learning the accounts payable side and the counter activity that she'll need to know for a transition into the county clerk position, and she's catching on quick. There's still always, some little bugs, especially with credit card processing. That's really seems to be complicated with the type of invoices that we get there, but she's catching on quick and very happy to have her there. And we're looking at the new agenda software from the same company who also manages our website. It's through Civic Engage. And we're hoping that if we go that route, it will save some time in preparing agendas, because as I think I've mentioned in the past, it takes 53 clicks to add one item to an agenda. And last week it was giving us lots of hiccups, not saving. It would just continue to spin and spin it. So we had extra work and time on the agenda processes last week, but this week it seems to be improving again. And new plat books are in the process of being created for the fall and winter. So we'll have those in place. And I can report that the hangar leases are current at this time.
Good.
And then this is the general report from the Next Request software. You can see it gets a lot of different buckets. There used to be one that had, I saw had a graph and pie chart, and I've asked them where that is. So they're investigating on where that report can be found, but this is the verbal one. So you can see it's broken down by the department area, and then it's got individual buckets on how much time is spent, the average dollars it's cost. As long as we enter that data in there, it'll calculate the amount of time that's spent on them. So it's quite handy.
Mr. Buckles.
Lynn,
Mhm.
are the new plat books going to be the same price, or did they?
I haven't
Well,
heard yet. I
okay.
haven't. It's
Who's
been
doing it?
$30 for a while now, hasn't it?
Rockford? Who's doing the
Same Mapping Solutions.
mapping stuff? Thank you. Any other questions?
Maybe just add on a comment for explanation, maybe it was where, so Lisa, retired, somewhat unexpected, due to some issues. When we looked at filling it, Lynn suggested we have a conversation with Liz. Liz is running for county clerk, so we're not presuming that she's going to be elected. We did hire it as an LTE though, specifically in case something happens where she, is or is not elected. We wanted to keep it clean, so, her anticipated tenure in the deputy clerk's positions through the end of the year is all she's been hired for.
Isn't she running unopposed? This,
Yep. Yep.
Okay. Number 13, radio communication project update.
Yeah, I have it on both agendas just because, especially with the notice of intent and the initial resolution approving it, it is, I think, a little unusual if we go the bug tussle route to extend our borrowing capacity to a private business. So I thought it was worthwhile to have it on both agendas. As everybody sitting here knows, the Finance Committee did approve sending those to the board for approval. Those items are not binding. They are just to keep bug tussle as an option for another month as we continue to figure out what our best path forward is for establishing our public safety radio network and tower sites. So I'm not going to go into repeat the details you guys have already heard.
Okay.
Okay. Same thing with item 14. I put it on both, again, in part because of, I think somebody actually talked about it last meeting about a little bit of a precedent when we work with outside committees as to our role. So I thought it was worthwhile to make sure we had on both because I see it as also an administrative issue in managing those relationships. Just, this is one of the outside entities we work with. It's a little unique, and I didn't mention this at the last meeting. If they were to have any financial improprieties, like should they, and it's not as if they can't meet their debts, but if there was like an embezzlement or some other activity where essentially illegal, that they lost money and had to repay a grant or a loan due to some type of malfeasance. It's just not bad management. There is an agreement that all the counties have signed years ago where the counties would be liable for those costs for this specific for Northwest SEP. It was probably 6-7 years ago when all the counties had to sign off on that as part of the way that organization runs. Just want to make sure you guys are aware of that. But again, Finance Committee forwarded that request, forwarded the resolution approving the $5,000 of assistance in a loan to the county board for next week's meeting.
So we should hear also, or is it good enough just come from finance?
I think it's good enough coming from finance.
Good enough, thank you.
That's listed.
That's what I was asking.
So that's right, it is on there.
I'll make that motion to bring it to the full board.
I'll second it.
Motion by Ms. Hessel, second by Mr. Buckles to bring this to the full county board as approved. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Lynn, on that, what you have on the paperwork for that motion, at the very end, you got Mr. Schuman there, yeah? On the one we just did.
Yeah, I think there was an extra page from an old resolution attached at the end. No,
No,
Keep going down.
The Northwest SEP. There's another page attached. It's page 54.
Yep.
Okay. Outside committee updates. And administrative committee report.
So item A, I just put on there as a discussion. It has come up and some of the public comment was in regards to that about whether or not we should have a newspaper of record. In state statute, it's an option for municipalities, counties to designate a newspaper of record. Sawyer County, we've gone back and looked as far back, and the records we have has never designated a newspaper of record. Let's see here. So if we did designate a newspaper record, whether it be the Record or the Gazette, there are criteria within the statute as to how often they have to publish, their track record, et cetera. Both papers actually meet that. If we were to designate, that means all of our official notices would have to be in that specific paper. Other than that, I mean, there's not a whole lot to it. There isn't a whole lot of benefit to having an official paper designated. In theory, maybe you could negotiate better rates if you were only publishing that paper, but it would probably be more of a hindrance to, not a hindrance, but we would just lose a little bit of flexibility that we have by having two papers in the county that both meet both meet the requirements to publish public notices in them. So it came up as a conversation. I think Mr. Buckholz and I talked about it a little bit last week. So that's why we put it on the agenda, just in case anybody wanted us to look further into that. Because, I mean, to be honest, we've had some issues with the Record of getting things published as we need them, either to communication issues, deadlines that we're at least unaware of on our side of when they have when they change their deadline for publication due to a holiday. And so we have had to get legal counsel involved in making an opinion on if we're meeting our legal requirements for publication of public hearings, like Class 2 notices, because we can only get it in the Record for 1 week. Then we run it in the Gazette for 2 weeks instead when that's happened.
And I've had issues with both papers meeting.
Everybody's had issues with both papers, but, so I thought that if you just posted it, if you had a designated area within your facility, like at the school, we post everything on the entrance way. And so that's how we're able to notice all meetings, all agendas.
For
Is
meetings and agendas, that's okay. Like, I think it's minimum of 2 or 3 areas of public. 3, but for like, there are some things like zoning, like class public hearings have to be, per statute, have to be published in the newspaper in like a Class 2 notice, which is a 2-week run with minimum requirements of what you put in there. Some of the tax deed are Class 3 notices for 3 weeks. So there are items that require publication in a newspaper that meets the definition of a newspaper per the statutes that are beyond meeting agendas.
What's scary is a lot of newspapers are going defunct. So I think that they have to stay on top of that and figure out a different way to publicize without newspapers. I mean, we've even seen the quality of our newspaper get less because it's smaller. So how do you, how are they going to do that in the future? I know you don't have a crystal ball, but.
No, and I'll give you, this is my opinion, and I know that this opinion is shared by others. So like the counties association, I think the league probably have made efforts to change statute so that you can post it in your building, publish it on your website as the minimum requirements for publication. And this is the part that might be somewhat controversial to some people. Like the newspaper association does a really good job of making sure we still have to publish things in the newspaper because that's a significant revenue source for newspapers.
Right.
So that's why we still have to publish certain things in the newspaper.
Is this a major complaint or just by few?
It's been an ongoing problem. I mean, it's happened multiple times in the last year of not getting things published when we need to get them published. Now, whether it's a complaint, I don't know.
We still have to follow the rules.
Yeah.
No, and I understand that. I'm just wondering if this is if it's a bigger issue than just what was presented. I just want to, okay.
That I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
So without having a preference, right now we submit it to both papers.
We've been doing, well, it depends what it is. I mean, primarily it's like zoning is they have been running it 2 weeks to meet the Class 2 notice in the Record and 1 week in the Gazette as a courtesy to that area of the county. I don't know Lynn, do you have something, do you do both papers? And then the other one is the zoning, the clerk and the treasurer are the primary ones that have to publish things in the paper. I mean, part of what we've discussed this last week to avoid, I don't know, to go, I guess, maybe above and beyond is just to commit to publishing 2 weeks or 3 weeks in both newspapers. That would increase the costs that we're incurring, and they're not, neither paper is cheap to publish legal notices.
No, and one is significantly higher than the other,
Which one's that, the record?
the Gazette.
Is that time?
And their fonts are always bigger, so they're, the publication is always bigger, and I've asked that they be the same size that's legally required.
I believe, the Sawyer County Record has been nothing but problems for zoning and printing what's supposed to be printed. And my suggestion to this committee would be that we refer it to the Sawyer County Gazette as our paper, not the Record. I guess I've never seen or heard or got any complaints on the Gazette, but I get many from the Record, especially on the zoning side.
I'll second the motion.
What are the circulation,
We have a motion by
numbers?
Mr. Buckle, second by
I'm sorry.
Mr. Righeimer. Go ahead, Mr. Duffy.
What are the circulation numbers for the paper?
Oh, circulation numbers? I don't know.
But they both meet the rule.
But so then you said that this Gazette is more costly to print than the Record?
I have had them miss some of my notices. So it's gonna happen either place.
Right, and then what are the repercussions that when they don't print the notices, but we've done our job? So we're being fair to the constituents, it's just the Record and the Gazette when they don't print it. So what are the ramifications?
Our efforts have been made, we've met our request, we can prove that we sent it, whether it gets published is up to the newspaper, correct, Andy? We've made every diligent effort to get it there.
We have, now it depends on what it is, and I would need to maybe look into this further. Like from a meeting standpoint, like we publish public hearings. If we can't prove that we've had adequate publication, we may not be able to hold a public hearing. Like, I don't know what happens if Lynn publishes her sample ballots, her election notices. I don't know what happens if those don't get published correctly. Like, you can show that you've tried to publish it, but if it doesn't get published, I don't know. I'd have to ask for some help researching that one. Same thing with like in REM or tax proceedings. I believe we have to show proof of publication in order to do the in REM process through the court. Because usually do you have to get an affidavit for your information?
I request them, I don't always get them.
Because that's when you publish a legal notice by the paper, you can or should be able to get an affidavit from them proving that it was published and the dates it was published on.
Right. But that's where I'm saying, like, the newspaper is liable then, not us. If we've done our due diligence or if the staff in getting those published, so they're a free for all.
Right.
But they still charge you.
Correct. Because it's really, the part isn't about, they're not going to incur liability. We incur liability if we have not adequately or met our burden for notifying the public of whatever we're notifying them for. We're still required to notify the public.
Right. So can we still have it where it would be on our website? It would also be posted in the courthouse.
Mhm.
So we're still publicly noticing that and not putting all the onus on the newspapers in case they don't print it.
I don't think so. If it's required by statute to have it published, to have a class 2 notice, because it'll say right there, class in the statute, a zoning hearing requires a class 2 public notice to be done. So we have to prove that has been done. Now, this goes into the complaint and how our councils looked at it. We have still met our burden, even though we didn't run it for 2 weeks in the Record. It ran in the Record and it ran for 2 weeks in the Gazette. We've met the public notice burden.
Yeah, I just think that the complaint should be made to the newspapers, not to the county. That's where I get a little frustrated with.
Well, that's what we're all
complaint.
frustrated with. But yeah, there really is no way to hold the newspaper accountable that I'm aware of, unless you have an option of another newspaper.
Well, it seems like we're just checking a box and they both have problems. One's more expensive than the other, but I mean, if you only have one, you're reducing your cost from doing it multiple times.
Right.
And it seems like we're just checking a box, and I think that's all. And whether the paper publishes it or not, it's somewhat out of our control, other than checking the box and doing.
It is definitely a checking in the box to meet the statutory obligation we have. Specific to the motion that's been made about going with the Gazette. Again, this is my thinking on the legalities is that we can. I think if you want to make it the designated newspaper per statute, then the clerk and the treasurer have to publish their notices in there as well. Because is your motion to use the Gazette for publication, or do you want it designated as the official newspaper?
Dedicated as the official newspaper, because another reason with the Sawyer County Record, if zoning presents an agenda, put in the paper that costs them, say, $700 and it don't make the paper, then they got to turn around and pay again to have that agenda replaced back in that paper. They got to pay twice. So they're not saving money, even if the Sawyer County Gazette is a little more expensive. But I believe that's the route we should go.
So I did talk to council about, about the public notice problems we've had, as well as the conversation we were going to have about designating an official newspaper. And just their opinion is that if you are tying yourself to one newspaper, and if they don't meet your publication deadlines, you definitely will have to republish or postpone public hearings. If you wanted to look at designating an official newspaper, one route to take would be to do an RFP and have both papers respond, because we might be able to negotiate a better rate by running all our notices in that paper.
But I also think it puts them on alert that we
Right.
notice that they are defaulting.
Yeah.
So I that's what I would be a proponent for, but not designating one or the other before doing an RFP.
Mr. Duffy.
What kind of money are we talking as far?
It's the winter paper versus the Hayward paper. Who gets access to it?
Well, I get
Notice is to give notice, and if we have a small paper versus a larger one,
It's checking the box.
Both of them.
both the same size,
I get access to both papers.
No,
what's the difference?
about 6,000 publications.
It's checking the box. It meets the requirements there, so that's kind of a moot.
But I still like the idea of a RFP.
How much money we talking about saving an RFP? Because there's a cost in doing an RFP or time.
We ask the public to shush.
Are you asking, the cost of RFP would be, we draft up the RFP document of what we're looking for, send it to them, and any eligible newspaper can respond. We would make it based on what the designation of a newspaper is by statute, who are the eligible respondents. And then they would be able to, ask for them to quote us a rate. I think, maybe to your question, I'm thinking we could put in the RFP, if they missed a deadline, we negotiate ahead of time what their accountability is for us. I think that could be put over an RFP. If you're asking though, I'm not sure if that's the cost you're asking about, or you're asking about how much we spend with them each month.
Whatever the rates are now, how much do you think they'd even come down with a competitive?
That I don't know.
And I don't know, and just to get clarification from Ron, it's not like a quality issue from your standpoint.
Right. I'm okay with whatever this board decides, but I'm speaking more or less on the zoning issues of it, because I get calls from Jay and say, well, we got to do this and this because it didn't make the publication. And whatever we can do to make sure that them get in the paper at time, all on time. And then what Stacy was talking about, I'm okay with that too. So, I guess I'm what you guys think too. I can rescind my motion, but I'm not sure I want to do it.
Well, I think without I mean, we've always done very well at doing our due diligence of researching. And if we don't give them the opportunity of doing an RFP where they go to bat, I mean, whether it's about price, I don't even think it's about price, it's about quality right now.
Yes.
But I think doing that due diligence before we designated a newspaper to say, you know, like Mr. Duffy said, where's the biggest reading portion, but who's going to offer us the biggest, you know,
Well, we
the-
know
the-
where that's.
No, and I understand that, but I think without putting them on alert and just saying, hey, we're not, because maybe it's not getting to the right person at the newspaper that it hasn't been published. You know, I think that we have to put them on alert to say, this is what we're considering, but not just for, you know, not just for one lens, but also the zoning, because those are two
Should be
separate
for all the money,
publications,
yes.
right? But I would feel comfortable with doing an RFP before I would feel comfortable voting on a designation.
In the RFP, how do you gauge other than price? If at all?
Well, because his wording, he said that he could put the wording in there, like this is what would happen if you don't publish it. So it's giving us more respect from the newspapers, I would say.
I'm sitting there thinking about it, and it'd be a way for us to maybe build better communication, like require them as part of the RFP to say, these are our publication dates for the entire year. So there are no communication surprises with having early deadlines. Just as another component of that.
Yeah.
Because I want to just add in, I understand that it is a check the box. Not so much from my chair, but from your chairs, it's kind of it's political, but it's a perception issue with the public too of, are we making an effort to inform them? I mean, I don't know how many people look at the legal notices to see if there's a public hearing in their town. I kind of think there's not a ton, but.
The ones that wouldn't go to the website.
Right.
Well, I always look at the local paper, and if I see that, I'll read it and see what it is. But I only get the Gazette. I don't get the Hayward paper because Tyrell and I have a problem.
So I guess, you know, if you want to wait on this, I'll rescind my motion to make the Sawyer County Gazette the permanent newspaper. That work? John, you made seconded the motion, but I guess if we can look at it, and we can always come back to this, we can postpone it and put it on the agenda.
Yeah.
So we got something more to look at, I guess, and I agree with Stacy. I didn't see it that way until you explained it, which it sounds good to me, but we'll take a look at it, so.
And we can always, if we made one designated, you can change that down the road as well, correct? So you're not stuck
You're
with.
not stuck with it, no.
So first tell me if you're gonna rescind your motion, please.
If, I'll resend it if Ron's resending, so.
I am.
Thank you. Do we need a motion for RSP?
I think you should make a motion to do the RFP.
I'll make the motion to do an RFP, and if we could bring the sample
Bring
RFP
it back.
back for the
Yep.
next month's meeting, that would be
Next
ideal.
month.
And I'll second it.
Okay.
The motion by Ms. Hessel, second by Mr. Duffy to do an RSP. Any other discussion? I thought it was a very good discussion. Thank you. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. What we got? You got more for your report? Okay.
So on items B, C, and D. It's not the right one. As we've kind of been discussing on a monthly, the clerk's done a really good job the last year of essentially corralling up all of our open public records requests, trying to make sure they're getting responded to, that we're working with the departments to develop some consistency, tracking them so everybody understands how many of these records requests we get and how we deal with them. That's kind of evolved into implementing Next Request, which is a software that is part of by the same company that does our website, that'll replace kind of what she had created in Excel to help us receive requests, respond to requests, track the request. We'll be able to publish the results. Like if somebody requests information, we can publish that on the website so that if somebody in the future wants that information, we don't have to recreate the request. I think it just make things, it's going to make things even more transparent and accountable going forward. But with that, we've noticed over the year, there's some inconsistency between departments and how they respond to a record. How do they account for the amount of time that they spend on locating a record or providing a record to the public? So the intent of kind of what we have here is a memo, some guidance for our departments. Generally, we refer to the public records document that the Attorney General has presented or has out there to help guide what is a record, how to respond, how to charge for it, what can be charged for. So that's essentially summarized in the first document, the guidance. That's mainly internal for our departments. The Next Request portal will be online, so if somebody wants to do a records request, they can go into this website and they can make the request and it creates the record, and then the clerk can assign that request to a department or an individual who does the follow-up. They upload the information. She's able to see that. It tracks time. If there's a charge for the record, it accounts for that. We cannot require the public to go online and submit the request. They can be still public records law says it can be verbal, can be written, can be in an email. We have to take them all as they come, but we still want the department to input them into Next Request so that we can, again, once we get the request into the system, it can be routed where it needs to be routed and then can be responded to. So that's just a memo that creates some consistency. And along the same lines, there's a public records request fee schedule that I've created to hopefully make things simpler and transparent. We establish a clerical rate of pay in here because that's a lot of times who's fulfilling the request. Well, department to department, the clerical person's wage could change. So we just established one. We picked the lowest one throughout the county and put that in there so there's consistency. It's clear to departments that, the location of records, we're not going to charge unless the staff time is going to exceed 50. That's part of the state statute. We're just putting that in writing. A lot of the copy fees are already part of our copy fees for other documents, but it just outlines in here how much we're going to charge for paper copies of, because you have paper to paper, you have paper to digital. It's like if you scan a page and email it, do you charge for the scan cost? So we're just putting that all in here. Sometimes we put them on flash drives, and we just put all the costs in here. If it takes the $1.92 that's referenced in here is based on, I think, 5 minutes of time for the person to put the record together. Cost of the mediums, cost per thumb drive, file formats, etc. New in here, I shouldn't say, we added this after we had it created because there was a new Act 253 passed this spring. Typically, we cannot charge for redaction of materials. So if we have a personnel file that somebody requests, we have to go through the personnel files and redact names or any personal identifiable information. We cannot charge for redaction. However, now redaction is eligible for charging for law enforcement. If they have audio or video records that are requested, they can charge the actual cost to go in and redact those records by pixelization or other means. That's a new thing in the state, so we made sure to put that in there. Prepayment, if you think the fees will be more than $5, we can request prepayment. And if it's over $50, we require prepayment. And then there's a minimum fee. If it's just a simple find a file, email the file, we estimate that cost to be $1.92. We're not going to invoice for that. Anything under $5 will not be charged for. So it's really just an effort to make everything consistent across the board. Departments get to see this, public gets to see this, and this is what we'll stick to until we make any changes to it. And then the resolution that's attached goes with it to say that we're going to adopt this as our fee schedule for public records and make it part of our fee schedule book that we approve annually.
Cecil?
Do you feel like all of the agents within our county have been, I mean, they've obviously been touched by open records requests, but do you think that this is something simple, everybody will understand, we don't have to babysit them through it?
I think it'll be helpful to them. I think it'll be helpful for Lynn, who's been dealing with them for
Mhm.
last year. And she's experienced everybody accounts their time differently and
Mhm.
having to figure out who the person is that's going to fulfill the records request. So I think this will actually help tell them this is what we're doing.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Ms. Cecil to approve.
I'll second.
And second by Mr. Egenheimer. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Let's see here. Just monthly updates. I think you've seen all the activity in our HR area, which a lot of it's positive. I mean, there's a lot of names there, some of that seasonal hires. We have had some announced departures in the clerk's office, and we have one coming up in the treasurer's office. Happy for the people that are retiring. We hate to see them go, but we have to replace them as well. So we are going to have a deputy treasurer position opening. We posted that. It actually appears somebody we just hired in another department is going to take that position. So we're going to have another opening behind it to fill. We've made progress in the jail. I think right now we're just a couple of female jailers short. Not a huge issue because our jail population is down around 51 right now. And if you recall, I think in 2022, you were up in the 90s. So a lot of things that seem to be working out there. We do have, we are still recruiting for deputies and are not seeing much on the application side. We have a court security deputy position and a road deputy position that we're recruiting for. LT, veteran service van drivers, we've got a couple of those on board. And trying to think of anything else. And paramedics we're still short on, but otherwise we seem to be having openings that we're filling. We've done a fair amount of exit interviews to find out why. I mean, a lot of them are actually retirements recently. Some people just moving out of the area or moving into a position that they're more interested in. They're not walking away with any ill will towards the county. They seem to be just taking other opportunities or relocating or retiring. Not much out at the airport to update. It's been pretty busy out there. If you live in town, you probably see the comings and goings of the bigger airplanes this time of the year. We were out there last night. It looks good. They're keeping up on the mowing that they're doing. We've cleaned up a lot of the area inside the fence this spring using the highway department. That's been good. The highway department is, we saw a lot of the good work they're doing last night as far as crack sealing. They're going after township work, which is good. They've got some big, I think we're paving, resurfacing 8 to 9 miles of road this year, which is good. Like the commissioner pointed out last night, that's all positive, but we're not in the position of rebuilding roads anymore. It's all resurfacing, so it's maybe some grinding, but most of the time it's just an overlay with the wedge. With doing 8 to 9 miles a year, that means we're touching a road every 25 years, which is beyond the life expectancy of the road. So that's going to catch up with us, or it's catching up with us already. And so we'll be looking at ways to increase our road maintenance budget and being able to do a few more miles road every year to try to get closer to a 20-year timeline. Nothing new on broadband outside of I have met with one local company that's given me some insight into what their plans are for the BEAD round of funding, which is they're going to go after it. It's very positive. And then I have another meeting coming up with another company. They're just kind of reaching out to me because they know that the county will most likely have to issue a letter of support or approval for each project that goes in for BEAD funding. So I think we'll see at least a couple companies going after those dollars. At this point, I don't anticipate we're going to see overlap unless there are new companies wanting to come into the area. Like, I don't think we're going to see multiple companies trying to service the same neighborhood or the same street unless there's new entities coming into play for that. LCO, we're talking to them. Well, it's not LCO, it's WOJB about the radio tower. We have not received the updated CJCC agreement. We were expecting to see some proposed amendments to that. Have not received that. And like I had mentioned before, the commissioner is working with them on the road issues. CJCC diversion treatment corridor full functioning right now. We submitted the TAD grant, which funds all that this week. Actually submitted it last week and submitted updates to it this week. For next year's funding, we're asking for an increase in the grant dollars from the state, but believe we can meet the additional match through in-kind contributions here. Opioid settlement update. Last month, I think I said I expected us to be in the neighborhood of 700,000 to 800,000. We received updated settlement information last week from the Counties Association. And right now, we're projected to get 1.08 million over the next 20 through 2038 is when the timeline is now. So we've received about $277,000 to date and have used at this point only about 40,000. We had approved 120,000 for the fentanyl awareness campaign. They were able to use some of their own, HHS Public Health was able to use some of their own grant dollars and funding to offset what we had approved for them. So at this point, they've only used 40,000 of the 120 we had budgeted for them. But they'll be coming back in the next month or September with the next phase of their work in that area. Otherwise, we talked a lot about the public safety network. Nothing new on carbon credits. Budget-wise, just an update on what we're seeing there. Like you've seen in the finance meeting, our revenues are in line. They're not stepping up like they've done in other years, but we expect to be fine on the revenue side. Expense side, I've got 2 position requests officially with the documentation I have asked for. One for a zoning technician and the other for a court security transport officer. There might be another one coming in, and we're starting to get obviously some requests for wage adjustments and that type of thing. But otherwise not, and that's kind of on the operating side. And the capital improvement side, we do have a big project at the airport next year that we'll be putting in the capital improvement plan. And then we're trying to program out everything with the highway department for the next 5 years because there's some big road projects, not next year, but in 06 and 07 that we'll have to anticipate to fit into our capital improvement plan.
Good.
Yeah.
On the airport issue, there's a number of planes that drop off or pick up people that aren't there for more than 15 minutes. What do we charge for that?
The airport does charge a fee if you don't take fuel. It's a schedule based on the size of the plane. So I was actually sharing with the committee last night that I had a unhappy pilot last month, was unhappy with people at the airport, so they referred him to me because I don't remember the exact charge. It was a few $100s that they had to pay to drop somebody off at the airport, and they thought they shouldn't have to pay the fee, and they thought the fee was too high. There's a schedule that they have. It's based on the size of the aircraft. If they don't take fuel, they get charged the fee.
Is that fee set by federal law or?
Nope, it's set here. It's set by our FBO that we have an agreement with, and we get a percentage of that fee, just like we get a percentage of the fuel sale.
Is this?
So 2 things. I was at the fly-in on Sunday for the pancake breakfast and there was jets flying in, but then they also had little planes and it was very cool. So ate too many pancakes. But anyway, then as a school board member, I am working with the Sawyer County Public Health and also Winter School, LCO School, and Hayward School. We're doing a suicide awareness walk on September 20th and then one in Winter on September 21st. So if you just keep those in mind, and all the shirts they're going to say Sawyer County Strong on the back. So just a plug for all of Sawyer County. We're trying to respect the whole county when we're doing this effort, not just, and all the money stays local. It'll go into the schools for suicide awareness programs, I guess.
I thought the sausage was better than the pancakes. Anybody have anything else? If not, items for next month. Anybody have anything, or if you come across something that you want to add, certainly contact us. We'll certainly try to get it on. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
on the site.